right, well hello everyone and welcome to the Science Rocks Career Expo for 2020 online for the very first time. So a different format this year, of course, due to the coronavirus restrictions, but it doesn't mean that you won't have your chance to contribute, ask questions to our guests today. We do have a chat line and a text line number. I'll give you the details of that very shortly. We are here at the University of Western Australia's Great Southern Marine Research Facility. My name's Tyne Logan. I'm the MC for today. Now this event, it's run by the Great Southern Science Council, a group of volunteer scientists based in our beautiful Great Southern region who work to connect science to the community. Before I do get started though, we do wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're live streaming from, the Menang people of the Noongar Nation, and pay our respects to the elders past and present and emerging. We respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to this region. So the Science Rocks Careers Expo, it's one of the annual events put on by the Great Southern Science Council. It's been running since 2014, primarily aimed at Year 9 high school students from all around the region. It showcases pathways in science, technology, engineering, maths and innovation. I think you know it as STEM. You will get a resource pack at the end of this, which contains 8 videos with science professionals and 2 promotional trailers as well, produced by Green Man Media Productions in their Albany studio. And there are also 3 video experiences of scientists on fieldwork and study guides, which are pretty exciting. I've actually had a bit of a sneak peek into them. They'll be definitely good to watch once you get that resource pack at the end of this. I would like to thank the sponsors today, the additional funding needed to create this resource. It's been generously provided by project partners, so a big thank you to Inspiring Australia National Networks, the Museum of the Great Southern, the Southern Ports Authority, Regional Development Australia and the Great Southern Development Commission and Curtin University, and of course the Great Southern Science Council. Thanks all of these organisations for their support. So today you're going to hear from 5 very interesting scientists, and what I think is particularly important is that they all work in different fields and different professions. They're all scientists, but they have very different career paths. 3 of them are here with me today. So hello to all 3 of you. Andrew Storrie, an agronomist and runs his own business. Katie Evans, a geologist, works with Curtin University, spends half your time in the Great Southern though, even though you're at Curtin University. And Wiebke Ebelling is a renewable energy expert here at UWA in Albany at the Great Southern Marine Research Facility. Now during these live interviews, I'll be asking questions for about 10 minutes, but I'd love your contributions as well. If you do have questions, you can text them in or you can send them on the chat line that we've got on YouTube Live. So the number, 0435 269 268. Have you got that? I'll leave it up for a couple of minutes. 0435 269 268. Without further ado, let's get started. Our first guest, Andrew Storrie, good morning.
Good morning, Tyne.
So you're an agronomist. I feel like that's a really broad field. What does that mean?
Yes, agronomy is a very broad field. Firstly, an agronomist or agronomy covers basically crop pasture production, so plant-based food production, I guess. So, you know, it's, I'm actually, it's a research. I do a little bit of field research, but my career's changed a fair bit over the years. But agronomy could be, you could be a plant breeder, you could be a soil scientist. Yeah, there's all these things you can do if you do ag in science, and which is based in agronomy.
Yeah, what I think is interesting is a lot of people think to go into an agricultural career, they would have to be on a farm versus a science career, a lot of lab work. But you're doing both and you're out in the field and you don't necessarily need to live on a farm.
No, actually I grew up in Sydney.
Oh, right.
But yeah, so but I used to spend a lot of my time school holidays on Auntie's farm, and so I got to like that. So I then I also went to an agricultural high school, and then I decided to do, after tossing a few things around, I decided to do ag science at university, and because I actually wanted to become an extension agronomist, so someone who
what does
actually...
that mean?
What does that mean? extension. It's sort of like adult education. So you can go out there and help farmers achieve what they want to achieve. So you're actually dealing with people, getting them to adopt new techniques, new technologies, and also trying to get them to, giving growers, farmers, a broader perspective on what things they need to be looking at and doing.
Where does the science come into it?
Science, well, science is everywhere. That's the thing. So, science, okay, so it could be, through my career, I've sort of now specialised in things like weed management, so controlling weeds, herbicides, pesticides, pesticide application. So the science comes in, you need to know some chemistry, you need to know weather, meteorology, so you need to know all these basic things. But agriculture is such a broad, it brings in science from all sorts of different areas. But I guess what I also do is, on the education side, is brings in sociology and psychology and all those sorts of things as well. So
yeah, a totally different kind of science.
Yeah, totally different kinds of science. Yeah, so some people say sociology is not a science, but it covers a broad range of stuff in what I do. Or you could become you could just become a plant breeder. So you do genetics and study genetics and then go into plant breeding.
There's so many different avenues then.
And now with gene technology, putting genes in different plants, selecting various traits and putting them in other plants. So it could be just general natural plant breeding, or it could be genetically modified stuff.
And that would be quite a growing industry, wouldn't it then, the breeding of plants, because obviously we've got the changing climate, so I assume everyone's always looking for a different version of...
Well, certainly, yeah, there's certainly... it can be controversial in some areas, but bringing in things like better disease management, resistance to disease, to plant pests, that sort of thing, is highly beneficial to the environment. So, So we get into politics. We get into politics.
I'm speaking with Andrew Storrie. He's an agronomist and a business owner himself. If you'd like to ask any questions to Andrew, you can do so. The text line number 0435 269 268. So have you got that? 0435 269 268. We've also got the YouTube live feed, of course. You can just type in something straight into the chat line there. Andrew, what's your favourite thing about being an agronomist?
Solving problems. Yeah, it's like being a detective.
What's the most common question you'd get asked? What are these
because I'm into weed management, it'll often be what is this weed, or how do I control this weed? And so it's interesting that first you need to make sure you're dealing with the right sort of weeds. You make sure you get the identification correct. So that brings in taxonomy and identification of plants. And then you need to look at what's legally you can do, what sort of herbicides might be registered, so legally registered, so growers can use those. But also you need to think about what other things the growers can do and not rely on herbicides. So parts of their management. So then that brings in the psychology and the sociology, because then you have to evaluate the person who's talking to you. You need to evaluate their skill set, how good they are at what they do, and whether they and what are their goals, because you don't want to be telling somebody something that they don't want to do for whatever reason.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes of plants and the agriculture.
So that's where the human stuff comes into it. You need to be able to sort of gauge, talk to people. You find out what they want.
Do you have to be a people person?
I beg your pardon?
Do you have to be a people person?
I think it helps. Yeah. I think it helps, because if you're not a people person, you should be doing straight research. Yeah. So,
What is your favourite thing, do you think, about being in the field?
The favourite thing? Oh, I like getting outside. I really, it's good to be able to go out and talk to people and help them solve their problems. Is
there a least favourite thing?
Because I'm self-employed, writing reports and getting money out of people. So that's a bit I don't like.
We've got a question on the chat line. What ag school did you go to?
James Roos Agricultural High School.
Where's that?
It's in Sydney.
Okay.
It was non-boarding, so it was a day school. It's quite interesting because I had a school reunion, a 25-year school reunion, and I was one of the few people there from my year that were actually involved in agriculture, despite going to an agricultural high school.
Really?
And you'll find that if you look up James Roos Agricultural High School, you'll find that it's probably the top school in Australia academically, but the demographics have changed quite dramatically.
And do you need to go to an ag school to get into the field that you're in?
No. Depending where you go, you don't actually need to do agriculture at school to do an ag science degree. It's a good idea to do science, a broad range of sciences though, chemistry, physics,
That's
biology.
Good tips to know, especially when you're in high school. Another question, why do you study crops and agriculture, and doesn't it get boring? Not my question.
Does it get boring? If it got boring, I wouldn't be doing it. So I've never been bored.
Why is it so exciting?
Again, because you're solving problems, you're figuring things out. You're really going back to the basics of nature and biology and as I said, human nature, because human nature comes into it too. If you want getting people to change what they're doing, to adopt stuff, that's the hardest part. Facts are easy. Getting people to change behaviour, that's the hard part.
I'd imagine the day-to-day for you is pretty different every day. You've always got a new problem to solve as well.
Well, at the moment I'm spending a lot of time in the office preparing for some webinars that I'm going to be running later in the week on in vineyards.
Oh, okay.
So I also doing weed management in vineyards and things like that. So because I've got the skill set and hopefully the people skills to go with it.
We mentioned the politics of it a little bit before. This one might be a bit of a political question. How do you stop GM crops contaminating other crops?
I don't think we have time to discuss that particular thing. It's
certainly a controversial topic.
It is a fairly controversial topic in some areas, and it's a difficult one to answer in a short. It's certainly not a yes and no answer. Yeah.
Do you have to be pro-GM or anti-GM to be an agronomist, or can you be, it doesn't matter?
Depends who you want to work for. No, you can be, pro, anti. I think you want to do what's best for the environment, best for growers, best for the industry. So,
are there any myths and misconceptions about your job?
Most people don't know what an agronomist is.
Yeah.
So that's probably the first thing.
Well, you've explained that well, and it's pretty much everything.
And people don't understand how broad the field is. It's a very broad field.
If you were talking to, say, a Year 9 student, and they said they were telling you what their skills are, what their interests are, what would they have to be for you to be like, you should look into agronomy as a degree?
I think they need to be keen on learning, finding out new things, because the industry. So I've been an agronomist for 40 years, and things have changed a lot in that time, changed dramatically. So you're constantly learning, and I guess that's the same in all fields. It's changed a lot, and you've got to be learning. It's hard to say, but what you need to be keen. You need to be keen to learn. You also need to be willing to. Don't think you're going to start at the top.
Yeah.
That's
something that's good to know.
Need to start. You need to start. Unless you know the right people, you can start to learn. Be keen to learn and do some basic stuff to start with.
Got another question on the text line. It's a tricky one. What is the greatest problem facing farmers in the Great Southern, agronomy-wise?
Agronomy-wise, climate change, I'd say. Yeah.
And just how to manage their farm
How
around
to manage there's climate change. So the drying climate, the increased variability in the climate. All Australian farmers are facing this. But one of the things that faces great southern growers in particular is fungicide resistance, because a heavy reliance on fungicides in growing a lot of their crops, because of it's a wetter area, and probably herbicide resistance to a lesser extent.
All right, I thought that might have been the last question. One more. Is there much money in working in ag? Without being too personal.
Well, I know people that are doing very well. It comes down to who you work for, how keen you are, I guess how hungry you are too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I've got one last question, and that's, what would you tell your Year 9 self?
Make sure you get a good grounding in the sciences before you go to university, and don't keep it too. Don't try and specialise too early, and even at uni, don't specialise too early. Keep it quite broad until probably your final year.
I think that's some pretty good advice, Andrew. Thanks so much for your time this morning. I'm sure we'll bounce back to you if we've got any more questions. It's Andrew Storrie, an agronomist, a business owner. Hopefully that gave you some inspiration about what to do if you're considering a career in the ag sciences or running your own business. In a moment, we will be speaking to geologist Katie Evans and Wiebke Ebelling, who is the manager here at UWA's Ocean Research Centre. So if you've got any questions in advance for them, get them in now on the chat line or on the text line 0435 269 268. We're now going to hear from another few scientists. This video has been recorded by Kylie Outhwaite and Tyron Thompson, who are from Fisheries and Community Education.
I'm a community education officer.
I work as a community education officer
As part of the Fisheries Education program at DPERD, which is Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development. I job share with Kylie. We share the role, we get along really well, we work really well together, so it's a real asset to the position. I have always been really passionate about the ocean. I grew up on the ocean, at the beach. I've always just really wanted to know everything I could to know about the ocean and everything that's in it.
I guess I've always had a really strong interest in conservation, in different types of environments, so aquatic environments and land-based or terrestrial environments.
We've got two elements to what we do. We do school education and also community engagement. So a lot of the school education involves time in the office doing planning, hands-on, fun, engaging activities for the kids.
It could be doing fish dissections with students in a school in the morning. It could be popping out to a boat ramp to talk to fishers as they come in or go out on their boats, to talk to them about rule changes or some of the science behind the management.
Being the face of the department really is what we do.
Connecting with people and helping them to understand. When people have that aha moment, that's a really, really positive thing for me. I've done my job in communicating that piece of information that they need. I guess when people have a blatant disregard for the rules, and so while there's so many people trying to do the right thing and follow the rules and be sustainable, there's a very small minority who take our fisheries resource for granted.
We often get some very grumpy customers. Often when I talk to people, and particularly young kids, and ask them what it is that they think that I do, they think I get to go fishing every day and that I'm out on a boat all day on the water, and sadly it's not the case.
People often come up to us and ask us to identify a certain fish, so they might try and describe it to us, or they might show us a photo of it on their phone. And so we can often help with that sort of thing.
We always get asked, what's the oldest fish? It's a interest point for people. They want to know what the oldest fish is that's ever lived. In Western Australia, the oldest fish that we've ever aged was a deep sea cardinal fish, a very ugly fish, caught in about 600 metres of water. And when our scientist aged it, it was 95 years of age, which is the oldest, and that was found only just last year.
Our scientists have to do stock assessments on different populations of fish. For that to happen, they need to sample a certain number of a particular fish species, let's say herring. That's one current one that's happening on the south coast. And within the year, they'll need 500 herring samples. One of the problems is having enough people donate them for us, because we're unable to go fishing. As much as we'd like to go fishing for work, we can't go fishing for work. So we do need people to donate those fish frames. And sometimes it can be quite tricky getting people to actually donate them to us. So I guess one problem is how do we get more, how do we get exactly what we need, and how do we get more people helping out and hearing about that project and getting involved. The wide open spaces, it's clean, it's beautiful.
I definitely will always recommend voluntary experience. If you have some spare time in your life over school holidays or between school and when you're going to be going to university, doing volunteer work goes a really, really long way.
Follow your passion. Do really try and think, what is important to me, what matters to me, what am I interested in, and pursue avenues to find out as much as you can. If you have a career in science, you're going to be having lifelong learning and discoveries and innovation, and I think that's what keeps you ticking.
That was Kylie Athwaite and Tyne Thompson from Fisheries and Community Education. Now I'd like to introduce you to geologist Katie Evans from Curtin University. Hello, Katie.
Hello.
You're a researcher and an academic, I guess, is the profession. So how does that differ from what we've heard from Andrew being, an academic?
I guess it's the fact that I have a salary that comes through. I work for the university, so my teaching and the research all kind of runs through the university, so I have the support. Well, it doesn't always feel like I have the support of a much larger organisation behind me, whereas Andrew is very much kind of making his own path, and that can be and so it can be challenging but also rewarding to do that. But then in the university, you have opportunities that come through being part of a large organisation.
Do you get to pick what you want to research?
Oh, I do, yes.
Oh,
yes.
good.
I mean, it depends to a large extent. If you can write a good grant proposal and make it sound good, you can be a lot more flexible. But then, the ultimate purpose of being a researcher is on some level to help society. So while there's some things that I'm really interested in, like tiny grains of metals that form in the Earth's mantle, and I would really like to spend most of my time looking at those, but to be completely honest, it's not clear how that's going to help society in the really long term. So to get funding to work on that is a lot more challenging than, for example, looking for nickel deposits, which are really important in the short-term future. So you've got that kind of influence on. There's good decisions and poor decisions on what to research.
And you've picked the field of geology, so why?
Yeah. Well, I went to uni having done no geology whatsoever, but I did a mixed science degree. So you had to choose 4 subjects in your first year, and I thought geology sounded, reasonably sort of fun and not too challenging. And then as soon as I got out in the field and started looking at rocks on the Isle of Arran, which is a rainy little island off the coast of Scotland, I realised that it was the best science in the world.
Why are you so...
Sorry, Wiebke.
Yeah, no offence, guys. Why is it the best science? What's so fascinating about rocks to you?
I guess it's just because it is such a huge puzzle, and you've got pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that have formed over 4.6 billion years. But it's like somebody's taken the jigsaw puzzle, they've superimposed several different jigsaw puzzles on top of that. So that's because the rocks change over the billions of years. So you've got that sort of time stacking of lots of different jigsaw puzzles. And then somebody's mixed it all up, thrown away half the pieces. And then you get to go to stunning locations to pick up those pieces, take them back to the lab and try and put a story together. around them. So
So you're a bit of a historian via rocks.
yeah, that's me, yeah. And the other cool thing is that you get two different groups of researchers, and they'll take the same rocks or get similar data, and they'll make up completely different stories. There's a lot of creativity.
And are you and are you good at jigsaw puzzles?
Well, I'm employed, so
So you must be. Good answer. I know you can do a lot of work in the mining industry if you're a geologist. What are the other fields or pathways for geologists?
yeah, that's a really good question because I work at Curtin, so we have the students coming in, and a lot of them, especially because we're in Western Australia, will have a relative or friends in the sort of like resources industry. But then there's the whole environmental side of things, which is really growing. And then there's sort of like hydrogeology, all the stuff to do with water. Again, that's a massively growing field. So there are a lot of vocations where a geology degree comes in handy. And then you look at the UK, where I did my geology degree, and there, because the resources industry isn't so big, people used a geology degree as it was, an opportunity to learn how to learn and to develop your kind of research skills. So a lot of my friends from that degree, some of them are working in the city of London doing stockbroking and things like that. So it kind of prepares you for a whole range of jobs.
Yeah. And is there a lot of jobs in geology?
In Western Australia, the vocational jobs, the sort of resources industry, it's quite cyclical. But there are usually jobs. Our Curtin students have a very good employment rate, even though there's good times and bad times. It's still a good career.
We've had a message come through from one of the Year 9 students at St Joe's on the chat line, the YouTube chat line. So if you do have another question, get them in now. We've got plenty of time. Or you can send us a text, 0435 269 268. This person says, did you ever consider another field of science?
Well, I guess when I first started my degree, I did maths, physics, chemistry, as well as geology. But as soon as I started doing geology, I had no thoughts of any other field of science. And I did actually try and leave geology for 3 years after my degree and before I started my PhD. But I actually still dreamed about rocks, so ended up going back to do a PhD.
And you mentioned earlier that you did a lot of work in Scotland or off some islands off Scotland. So where's the coolest place you've been? Is it a bit of a travelling job?
Oh, well, I guess it's another island. But a couple of years ago, I had the chance to go on a boat to Macquarie Island, which is halfway between New Zealand and Antarctica.
Wow.
To spend 2 weeks looking at the rocks there. And not only is the location one of the coolest in the world, because there's albatross, there's seals, there's so many penguins, it was just incredible. But the rocks are also incredibly cool because what Macquarie Island is a slice of the ocean floor that, through the movement of the tectonic plates, has kind of ended up being above the surface of the water. And it's the only place on the whole planet that you can see that section through the ocean floor without it having gone through some really big sort of tectonic movements which can kind of disturb it and mess it up. So it's a unique place geologically, as well as the penguins.
This might be as well as the penguins. That might be the answer to this question. What is your favourite rock to study and why?
Yeah, it's kind of varied over time because I quite like all rocks mostly. But at the moment
You're spoken like a true geologist.
But at the moment I'm fascinated by a rock type called peridotite, and that's the rocks that make up the Earth's mantle. So that's from below the crust, so from you've got the Earth's crust, which is what we're mostly walking on, and then you've got the mantle, which is what makes that from maybe 60 kilometres down to 2,700 kilometres down. So there's lots of it, but mostly we don't see it at the surface because it's a very dense rock. Yeah. So there's only a few places on Earth where it's exposed at the surface for us to study.
Another question on the chat line. Have you found many crystals during your geology field work trips?
Yes, I have.
Ooh.
There's a place in Vermont in the USA where I did my PhD where there's just this silver wall. It's a silver wall of a mineral called muscovite, and in it there's red garnets. So beautifully shaped, perfectly crystalline red garnets from like 1 centimetre, 2 centimetres in size. And me and my husband, who was my field assistant at the time, we just sat there for a whole afternoon.
Oh, wow.
Picking out these garnets. And I think we've got a box of them.
Oh, really?
Somewhere.
Oh.
So, yeah.
What a special moment. It sounds like you've been travelling everywhere as well. USA, Scotland, Australia, Antarctica.
Geologists do get to travel. And for people in the Albany region, there's some really cool crystals near Middleton Beach. But if you find a really nice one, leave it there for other people to see.
Just one last question. What advice would you, and I've asked this to Andrew as well, what advice would you give your Year 9 self?
Yeah, don't be afraid of being smart. So, I guess when I was at school, I probably was quite shy about the fact that I could do maths and things like that, and was embarrassed and would try and hide it. And now I know that it's something that's really worked for me, and I could probably have saved myself a lot of trouble by feeling lucky instead of trying to hide it.
I know I said that was my last question, but I like this one on the chat line. Do you think geology rocks? Well done to whoever sent that in, by the way.
Yes, 100%.
Oh, Katie, thanks so much for your time this morning, and thanks so much for your questions as well. We've got another pre-recorded interview from another researcher, Paul Smagasi and Alex Clark, who are in IT. You'll hear from them now.
I own and operate a business supplying schools with educational products. It's called CD Soft Educational Resources.
I work for a company called CD Soft.
And we've been operating from Albany for the last 25 years. My father was a teacher, a geography teacher. I'm actually trained as an engineer, and I worked as an engineer for 5 years in the construction industry. But during my time at university, last year, the last final year, we got into coding and programming and so forth, and my dad was doing some interesting work down south with requiring some coding. That brought me down south to work with him on that and on other educational programs.
Obviously check your emails and then I'd start working on contacts going through Australia's schools, and then we'll just go through that, get all the contact details for the schools and teachers, reach out to them for business. I'm a very technical person, so during the day normally I'd be doing stuff like data entry, contact entry, but what I love doing there is getting to work with the new products, the products that we have, and then getting to fix the ones that are breaking, any that are broken, like 3D printers. Love working on them.
It's constantly been refreshed. You're looking at new products, you're looking at new genres of products. Education is somewhat of a fashion industry in the sense that education goes through trends as many other industries do, and it means it gives you an opportunity to refresh and look at new products. When you can't come and get across to people the ideas that you're trying to portray to them or trying to get them to understand is also perhaps a down point. In some ways I think that perhaps that education is, secondary education, primary education is at the forefront of things here in Australia. I think perhaps that's something that I like to see changed, and something that people maybe misunderstand is that education here in Australia, I think, is ready for some renewal, for some changing the way we do things, especially in light of the changing world economy and the way that business is conducted and the way that we as a nation need to grow. An instrument or tool that's been quite popular recently is laser cutting and so forth, because there has been an emphasis on STEM, there's been an emphasis on making things. And so typically they will ask us, because there's a plethora of choices out there, which one they think would best suit their needs. And so we try and answer them by asking them questions first and asking what their needs are, and what they need to achieve and what they want to achieve, and perhaps then give them an answer. I love it because it's just natural beauty. It's natural beauty, it's temperate climate. The fact that life is quite simple here. We don't have to commute massive distances to get anywhere. Everything's within 5 or 10 minutes. And we have pretty much everything you need. We have fine food and wine, and what else do you need?
You know, we're busy enough down here that we've got a town and there's enough to go see, but I love that it's also a lot quieter than going up to Perth.
I think if you can find something within science or within any walk of life that you're really passionate about, that you love doing, and if you make money as a byproduct of that, then life will be good. You know, you'll be doing something that you don't mind getting up for every day. There'd be nothing worse than having to go to work, loathing having to go to work. I mean, that's a miserable existence. I really would recommend that you follow your passions as best you can and stick with it as much as you can, and have some fun along the way.
Yeah, well, definitely. If you've got any interests in certain areas, there's so much opportunity out there for different areas. Start following it and opportunities will pop up. They always pop up for these sorts of things, and there's plenty of work out there for it.
It's just that natural curiosity that, you know, I think I have and a lot of people have, is to understand the unknown, is to observe something and then try and explain it. And this is essentially what a science is. It's a voyage of discovery, so it's always new, it's always fresh. And that's, a bit like I was describing before regarding my business, is that the fact that if it's new and fresh, and you're finding out things that no one has ever found out before, that's, that really gets the adrenaline going and gets the excitement going.
That's Paul Smagasi and Alex Clark giving you some IT tips there. They make educational tech videos. Now, last but not least, Wiebke Ebelling, UWA Wave Energy Research Centre Manager, a big role. Hello.
Thank you. Yes, turns out to be.
Let me just start with this. You've got a background in biological science, so neuroscience, marine science, astronomy and ocean engineering.
Obviously.
Are you really indecisive?
You would think so, yes. And I was, in fairness, and thinking about the question you asked the other guys last, for me, my year 9-old self would have sort of probably done exactly what I would now say, don't stress out. Try things, and try things that are not targeted at one particular aim. So I kind of just started biology as one of options that were kind of ranking similarly on my to-do list and on my sort of short list of career options. And, other options were very different, could have ended up very differently. And
you've gone from the seas to the skies.
Well, that too, exactly. So when I left the marine science job, which was the first job after the biology PhD, and I went into science outreach with marine science, and then I got the astronomy job, my boss then said, well, we might still, have a crossover if there's a meteorite crashing into the ocean. I was like, okay.
It sounds like a long shot.
Yeah, well, it was. It was an awkward way of saying goodbye. But no, exactly. It was. It is ultimately for me. I learned to appreciate science more by talking to other people about science rather than doing science. I did a lot of projects, and they were all interesting. I just like interesting things. That's fine. But it was through talking to other people that I realized, well, this is actually what I want to do. So also as part of my PhD, not as part of my PhD, but at the same time as my PhD, it wasn't even my PhD, it was my honours. I also did training in being a workshop facilitator. So I was freelance for a couple of months before I started the PhD. And it all just sort of happened. So the PhD happened. So I moved to Australia and I started this PhD. And while you're, entertained by furry marsupials, that's kind of all you need, really. But I realized after a year or so into the PhD that, the lovely nerdiness that Katie has shown us, that's sort of not me. I'm not the person who gets stuck into that research and, disappears into, 3 terabytes of data and then reemerges with all these stats under her belt. That's not me. But because I did the facilitator stuff, I started an outreach initiative for early career researchers during the PhD. And that did professional training for PhD students, because I always felt like, don't just do the degree. You need more. Like, you need to know about like good writing skills. You need to know about presenting skills. Like,
is that science communication?
It is. And at the time, like, I'm not ancient, but at the time it was undervalued. It's becoming a bit more mainstream now. And so I went into schools and I talked about the science. And the feedback you get doing that, for me, that's sort of where you fill up your cup again, that you drain by doing, but that you do by, data analysis. Like, for me, it was that way. Like, I did my outreach and I kind of replenished that cup.
Yeah, right. So kind of the events that we're doing today is a bit of science communication.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's why I think for all of us, we're on the Great Southern Science Council, because if we're all tucked away in our home offices or in our university offices, we can't share that appreciation that science is more than a job, it's more than a passion, it's also something that's just everywhere. Like, anyone with a good understanding of what science is will have so much more in any job, in any profession.
Yeah. And so in your managing role at the research centre, what is a normal day?
There is no such thing. That's the interesting thing. So, you kind of think like, well, right, yesterday I didn't get to do the 3 things that are ranking top on my to-do list. Today I will.
Mm-hmm. And what might those things be?
The same things that they will be the next day, because you never get to them. So there's a lot of, there's just so much happening. There's a lot of emails, obviously.
Yeah.
And meetings, and I've always lived on video conferences, to be honest, because like my work life has always been across different locations. But it is a bit of the mundane report writing. That's always part of it. But for me, ultimately, I talk to people that come from very different backgrounds. And now there's this popular misconception that, it's actually psychology. So I did a minor in psychology too, because, why wouldn't you? And it's and so in communication psychology, you say, sending the message is not enough, because only the ultimate truth is what the receiver ends up receiving. So everything that in the black box that is in between that, and that can be particular mindsets and whatnot. So if I'm talking to students, I can't use the same lingo when I talk to state government, for example. And just really appreciating, like, where are these people coming from? What is ultimately the most interesting thing? So it's different. If you talk to people in Albany, you want to make sure that they know where Albany stands in the future of ocean energy. If you talk to kids, you go back to basics and says, like, well, do we need renewable energy? And which kind of jobs will be out there in 10 years' time?
So you're taking science of all fields and you're delivering it to all the different audiences and different platforms.
Yeah, pretty much. And as a center manager, so obviously I'm not the outreach person. I kind of am, but that's not why I'm employed as such. But yeah, exactly. So you have to talk to funding bodies and sort of get them on board, just as much as you sort of do your science communication to others.
Yeah, and that's of course really important, getting the funding for this science as well.
Yes.
We've got a question from Elaine on the text line. She says, what do you hope to get out of the research from the WAVE Research Centre?
So ultimately, what the idea is that, we figured out a couple of renewable energy sources. They work well, that's good. Renewable energy is always a win. But ocean energy, in particular, for Albany or for the Great Southern region, this is, you kind of have to appreciate that we're sitting effectively, relating back to geology, we're sitting on a gold mine. Like, the wave resource off the coast of Albany is like the best in the world. And you don't necessarily find a gold nugget in your backyard and say, well, that's good to know, and put it back in the hole and pet the grass on top or whatnot. Usually you make something out of that. So in this case, this offers an opportunity to push the envelope in research and in innovation, figure out how we can harness the energy from the ocean, which is so much more intense, so much more consistent than other renewable energy forces, and put Albany sort of on that map, like, metaphorically and literally, of ocean renewable energy.
If you've got any questions for Wiebke, do send them in on the chat line or on the text line 0435 269 268. You mentioned innovation there. What I guess, paves the way for innovation, do you think?
It's one of my pet peeves, actually. So in the job prior to this one, which was astronomy, we produced the children's comic, and as part of that, we looked into what kind of basic astronomical research or space research led to innovation without planning to do so. So, serendipity plays a huge role in my career, obviously. And in this case too, for example, my best example always is Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi was not invented because the government said, whoop, there's your $3 billion, which never happens anyway. Sit down and please invent Wi-Fi. It happened because there was a small research team with a very moderate research grant who were looking to find evaporating black holes, because that's what you do, obviously. But they coded up a software that eventually made Wi-Fi possible. And innovation needs exactly that. Free space, smart people of different backgrounds, different, professions around the table to come up with smart solutions, which is what we need for ocean energy just as well.
That might answer this next question. We've only got a minute, so I'm going to go rapid fire through a couple of chat questions. One from the St. Joe's Year 9 class: why is wave energy taking so long?
Oh, it's tricky. I mean, the marine environment is harsh, waves are powerful, which is the whole point, but obviously you have other things like biofouling and marine growth to deal with. But it works in other places of the world.
Okay. And another question, if you've got a background in astronomy, can you briefly explain the string theory?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Sure. How many seconds do we have left? Okay, well, probably no is a good answer, because I'm not a professional in astronomy. I think the idea is that the fabric of the universe is sort of looping back on itself. So a string, you can sort of ball it up into a ball of string, and then you have parallel universes in there. Obviously,
Yeah, obviously. Makes total sense. One last question, this one from me. What would you tell your Year 9 self?
I think, keep going. That's all right. Don't stress out because your sister always knew what you wanted to be. You'll figure it out. And, and just keep going. I think retrospectively, I'm not too unhappy.
All right, very good. Well, we've put you on the spot today with a lot of questions. We've put you all on the spot today. That pretty much concludes our live interviews. Of course, well done for answering all those questions. I'm sure there's many more if we'd got them in. Probably the hardest question I think you've already had to answer, though, and that is this one.
Oh, that's a tricky one. Ice cream on a hot summer day?
Ooh, well, I like pasta, although I probably shouldn't eat too much of it.
Oh, gee. Favourite food? That's a big call. I like food. My wife's an extremely good cook too. She likes to cook. Okay, cuisines. I'd have to say Italian's comfort food. Great comfort food. I love pasta.
Hot chips. And pesto.
My favourite food, no dishes in particular, but my favourite food is pasta. I love pasta. Anything pasta is just awesome.
My favourite food? Oh, gee, that's left centre, isn't it? I would say pasta. I do make my own pasta sauce, and I don't make my own pasta. I don't have enough time to, but I do enjoy a good plate of pasta. And recently, we've been getting into catching and eating fresh fish, which I think is pretty good as well.
That's an interesting question. I like vegetarian, Asian style foods or dals. Or favourite food, penne alla vodka. The vodka burns off, don't we?
Freshly caught fish, squid and chips. So yeah, I love being able to go and catch your own fresh seafood and be able to eat it for dinner. So that's definitely a favourite of mine.
Hopefully that's a little bit of inspiration for you for dinner tonight, either for yourself or maybe for your mum and dad to cook. And that's the live component of the expo today. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Andrew, Katie, Wiebke for your time today. You've answered a lot of questions and hopefully it's brought some inspiration to the audience today, particularly the St Joe's class of Year 9. Thank you for all your questions today. There is going to be a study guide and a resource package that you can access so that you can rewatch all these if you missed a few bits. So to download the videos, you can go to the website, which is www.greatsouthernScienceCouncil.org.au. So I'll say that one more time, www.greatsouthernScienceCouncil.org.au. And schools, you can also request to receive the whole resource pack on a USB. To finish off today, we're going to head out in the field, see what Tim Button, who's with the DBCA, does on a day-to-day field excursion. Thanks so much for your time.
I'm the Albany District Fauna Operations Officer for Parks and Wildlife Service in Albany under the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions. Today I'm out here on Haul-Off Rock doing some sea lion surveys. Just checking up on the resident sea lion population, checking out the pup age and just trying to get a general count, doing a bit of filming, also doing a bit of scat collection to look at some dietary analysis. So yeah, as you can probably guess, I work in the wildlife ecology. I'm responsible for all the fauna work under the Western Shield program in Albany, which includes coordinating the baiting and the fauna trapping and monitoring for our Western Shield sites. I also look after any fauna response, so whale disentanglements, injured kangaroos, all that sort of thing. Best things about my job is probably working in places like this on days like today. Fantastic to be outdoors, working with animals, just what I've always sort of wanted to do when I was a kid. Worst part of the job is probably working outdoors when it's raining and really cold, and yeah, sometimes dealing with injured animals and having to euthanize them is not always the most pleasant thing. Quick rundown on some of the tech we're using today. We've got a drone just to take some footage and improve our sea lion count estimates. It allows us to pick up a few animals that we don't see when we're walking around, get a good overview of what's happening on the island. A bit of safety equipment, we've got a gaff helmets for when we're landing, attach your GoPro for extra footage, and we have a live intercom system just to improve our communications, getting on and off the boat and onto the islands. Speaking of the boat, that's the vessel we have on the south coast here. It's great for accessing all our islands. Very safe, capable boat, allows us to get to a lot of places that we wouldn't normally be able to.